So ito yung Newton's first law of motion. So Newton's first law of motion. Sabay-sabay nating intindihin ito. Kalimutan ko. So every body continues in its state of rest or of uniform motion in a straight line unless it is compelled by an external force acting on it. Okay? So, sa madaling salita, yung Newton's first law of motion, ang isang object daw will remain at rest. For example, yan yung object natin. If it is at rest, will remain at rest unless merong force na i-apply para mag-move. Or, it is in motion unless merong additional force that will change this the motion of this object. So, in its state of rest or of uniform motion in a straight line unless it is compelled by an external force acting on it. So, parang the object will remain at rest and the object will remain in constant motion unless merong in-apply na additional force that will change its state of rest or its state of constant motion. So, Newton's first law of motion. Hindi ko alam kung paano ang keyword yan, pero balik, ano na lang yan, basa-basahin na lang ulit para ma-familiarize yung definition. Okay, so Newton's second law of motion, ito naman, ang keyword dito is yung momentum. So the rate of change of momentum of a body is directly proportional to the impressed force and it takes place in the direction of the force acting on it. So, basahin na lang natin yan. Basta, lumabas ito sa board exam namin. I-familiarize niya lang yung definition. Then, Newton's third law of motion. So, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Ito yata ang pinakamadali. So, Newton's third law of motion. Then, we have the Newton's law of gravitation. Every body attracts the other body. So, the force of attraction between any two bodies is directly proportional to their mass and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Yeah. So, yung formula niyan based on the definition. So, ito yan. Ito yung dalawang mass. By yung formula na to parang dinerive lang dito sa definition. Directly proportional to their mass and inversely proportional to the square of the distance. Okay? So, kung makikita nyo dito, so the constant of proportionality is yung G. Ito yung it's a constant, universal constant, ito yung value. And these are the masses, and this is the square of the distance between the two masses, and it's inversely proportional to the gravitational force, to the gravitational force of attraction. So ito yung formula. Then the law of transmissibility of force, the state of rest of motion of a rigid body is unaltered if a force acting on a body is replaced by another force of the same magnitude and direction but acting anywhere on the body along the line of the action of the replaced force. Then the parallelogram law of forces. So if two forces acting simultaneously on a body at a point or represented by the two adjacent sides of a parallelogram, the resultant is represented in the parallelogram which passes through the point of intersection of the two sides representing the forces. Mabilis maintindihan to sa problem. So, later sa example natin. So, in engineering mechanics, supposed to be may at least basic knowledge na kayo ng algebra at saka yung trigonometry. Because we will be dealing here with triangle and polygons. So, as far as I know, parang wala pa tayong mathematics review, di ba? So, pero basic lang naman ang kailangan dito. Yung basic sine law, cosine law, yung triangle, yung 90 degrees triangle, yung sine, tsaka cosine. Yun lang naman ang kailangan dito. Saka yung basic ng algebra. So, I know, kabisado niyo pa rin yan. So, we will discuss with this triangle law of forces and polygon law of forces. Haluan na lang natin ang konting review ng trigonometry. Kasi gamit natin dito sa engineering mechanics. Okay, so triangle law of forces may be stated as if two forces acting on body are represented one after another by the sides of the triangle, the resultant is represented by closing side of the triangle taken from first point to the last point. So, yan siguro ibig sabihin niya. So, kung mamaya na lang siguro sa ano na lang sa sample problem. Madali maintindihan. Focus tayo dun sa sample problem. Okay, so then polygon law of forces may be stated as if a number of concurrent forces acting simultaneously on a body are represented in magnitude and direction by the sides of a polygon. So, taken in order, then the resultant is represented in magnitude and direction by the closing side of the polygon taken from first point to the last. So, mabilis maintindihan yan dun sa problem. So, problem ulit tayo. Then, system of forces. When several forces act simultaneously on a body, it constitute a system of forces. Various system of forces, their characteristics and examples are given in the next. Yan. So, sample problem natin. So, system of forces, we have force systems, collinear forces, characteristics, line of action of all the forces act along the same line. So, ito, dapat din itong iintindihin. So, collinear should be on the same line, collinear. That's why the characteristics is line of action of all forces act along the same line. So, collinear. So, they are on the same line. Then, coplanar forces, so they are on the same plane. So all forces are parallel to each other and lie in a single plane. So parallel and on the same plane. So coplanar. Okay. Collinear, the same line. Coplanar on the same plane. So yung mga keyword yan. Then coplanar like parallel forces. Then all forces are parallel to each other, lie in a single plane, and are acting in the same direction. So, coplanar like parallel forces. Coplanar concurrent forces. So coplanar forces acting on the same plane. Concurrent acting on the same time. So coplanar, concurrent, so forces acting on the same plane and on the same time. So line of action of all forces passes through a single point and forces lie in the same plane. Okay. Sa coplanar, the same plane, concurrent at the same time. Yeah. Collinear, the same line. Coplanar, the same plane, concurrent at the same time. System of forces, coplanar, non-concurrent. So, mabilis natin maintindihan yan. Coplanar, the same plane, pero hindi concurrent. So, all forces do not meet at a point but lie in the same plane. System of forces, non-coplanar, parallel forces. So, I know you will have a copy of this one. Basahin nyo na lang ito. So, non-coplanar concurrent forces. So all forces do not lie in the same plane because it's non-coplanar, but their lines of action pass through a single point. Okay, so concurrent. So example is a tripod carrying a camera. So it's a three-dimensional, but all the legs are but all the legs of the tripod passes through a common point. Yung pinatungan ng camera. So non-coplanar, non-concurrent forces. So all forces do not lie in the same plane, and their lines of action do not pass through a single point. So example, forces acting on a moving bus. So not on the same plane, not acting on the same time, not meeting in a single point, so non-concurrent. Okay, so coplanar, the same plane, concurrent, the same time, and meets in a single point. Kasi non ito, so you're not on the same plane and not acting at the same time and not meeting in a single point. So non-coplanar, non-concurrent. Okay, statics. Statics is a branch of mechanics which studies the effects and distribution of forces of rigid bodies which are and remain at rest. So parang bumalik na tayo kanina. Okay. So ito na. Ito na yung mga formula na palagi natin maalala sa mechanics natin, di ba? So yung mga resultant of concurrent forces. So concurrent, those are forces meeting in a single point and acting at the same time. Concurrent. Okay. So resultant. So resultant, kabisado nyo parang ata ito. So kung maalala nyo yung for example, ganito siya. Ito yung axis natin. Tapos we have a force acting here. Meron tayong force doon, merong force nandyan. Diba ginagawa natin dyan is kinukuha natin yung component. Diba? Component ng X, component anong Y. Tapos ito naman component ng X, tapos component ng Y. Parang ganyan. Diba? Kinukuha natin yung component. Tapos, ang ginagawa natin, sinasum natin yung forces acting on a certain direction. Say, forces along X, the summation of forces along X, Rx. Then, Ry, summation of forces along Y. Then, yung total resultant is the SRSS, or the square root of the sum of the squares of each component. So, component along X, component along Y. So, mamaya sa sample problem, mabilis maintindihan. Then, yung angle ng resultant, burahin ko lang ito. Okay, kung ito yung plane natin, so if this is the resultant, so we have here Rx. So this is Rx. This is Ry. So ito yung total forces along X, o yung net forces along X, and net force along Y. So ito yung resultant, kaya is by the theory of triangle, yung 90 degrees triangle ni Pythagorean theorem ba yan? Pythagorean theorem. So this R squared equals X squared plus Y squared. Kung maalala nyo yung formula, di ba? Ganun yung ito yung triangle natin. This is A, this is B, this is C. By the yung na-discover ni Pythagoras. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Diba? So yan yung Pythagorean theorem. So dito in-apply natin yung Pythagorean theorem. So yung A is the net force along X, then B is the net force along Y, then C is the resultant. So kaya yung formula niya is summation of forces, the square of force along X, the square of force along Y, then square. So this theorem is coming from the Pythagorean theorem. Now, if it is in 3D, so of course you have the 3 direction. So if it is in space, we have the X, Y, and Z direction. So we're going to calculate the net force along X, the net force along Y, the net force along Z. Then, by the Pythagorean theorem, same lang. So the square of X plus the square of Y plus the square of Z, then square of. Then its component. Okay, itong component pala, if you will recall, if this is a triangle, so ito yung basic ng triangle, 90 degrees triangle. If this is theta, okay, for example, this is R, this is RY, this is RX. Okay? By yung basic trigonometry dito tayo. 'Di ba? Yung sin theta, kung maalala niyo ba ito, sin theta equals, 'di ba, opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite over hypotenuse. Okay? So anong opposite ng theta? 'Di ba, RY? So RY ang opposite. Then the hypotenuse is R. So yan yung sin theta. Now by basic algebra, kung isosolve natin yung RY, so therefore RY equals R sin of theta. So RY is the component of R in the vertical direction. Okay, so RY is the component of R along vertical direction. Now, sa cosine naman, so dito tayo, palitan natin ng kulay. So cosine theta equals adjacent. So this is the angle, ang adjacent niya is RX, di ba? The adjacent niya. So RX over R. So to solve the R component along X, so Rx equals R cosine theta. So the same concept lang pag-derive nito, yung formula na ito. The sample problem, i-apply natin yan. So yun lang yung basic formula ng trigonometry. Before our sample problem, in the sample problem, we will discuss again this basic formula ng trigonometry. Okay, so equilibrium of forces. So summation of forces along X, summation of forces along Y, summation of moments, if this is in a 2D or if it's in a plane. But if it is in a space, so you will have the summation of forces along Z also. So summation of moments along X, summation of moments along Y, summation of moments along Z should be equal to 0. So two forces are in equilibrium if they are equal, collinear, and oppositely directed. So if two or more coplanar forces are in the equilibrium, they must form a closed polygon. So Ibig sabihin daw nito, pagka daw if two forces are in equilibrium, if they are in equal planar, if two or more coplanar forces, so maraming force nag-act yan. If you will draw the closed polygon, kailangan if they are in equilibrium, magsasara sila. So for example, doon na lang sa sample problem para diretso na. Maliit ang space dito. Oh yeah, it's a sample problem. Okay, so as I've discussed, ito yung mga basic ng trigonometry that we need to have a basic knowledge before we will study this mechanics. Pero i-discuss natin ito. Basic lang naman ang kailangan. So this is the law of sine. So a triangle with sides of length A, B, and C. So this is A, this is B, and this is C. Then the law of sines, or sine rule, states that the ratio of the length of a side to the sine of its corresponding opposite angle is constant. So see, from the definition, so A, this is A, this is the A, and the sine of the opposite angle. So kung ito yung side na A, yung opposite angle niya ito, di ba? Sine alpha. So yan yung sine law. So A over sine alpha, then B, ito yung B, ang opposite niya is yung beta. So B over sine beta equals C over sine beta, gamma. Yan. So yan yung sine law, basic lang. Now, based on my experience also, pag nagsusolve ka ng angle dito, because this alpha, beta, and gamma, these are angles. So kung ang angle mo is more than 90, I think, so you will not get an angle more than 90 degrees from the sine law. So even obvious na masyado, yung diagram mo na more than 90 degrees, pero yung binibigay ng sine law is less than 90 degrees. So if the angle is more than 90 degrees, do not use this sign if you're going to find the angle. But if you're going to find the length, it's fine. So you can use this formula. But if you're going to find this alpha, beta, and gamma, and the angle is more than 90 degrees, so I advise you that you not use this formula. So you're going to use the next formula, which is the law of cosines. Kasi minsan, kahit tama na yung solution mo, suppose wala sa choices. Yung pala is, yun na ang experience ko. Hindi ko rin maano yung theory behind. So, meron naman siguro explanation niya. Yeah, ito naman ang law of cosines. The first one is law of sines, then this one is the law of cosines. For a triangle with length of sides A, B, and C, and an angles of alpha, beta, and gamma respectively, given two lengths of a triangle at A and B, and the angle between the two known sides gamma, to calculate the third side C, the following formula can be used. Okay, so mabilis lang ito intindihin. Pati yung law of sine, di ba? Yung law of sine is yung side over the sine of the opposite angle equals ganun din sa kabilang side and the opposite angle. Okay. Dito naman, i-zoom ko. Control 1 na lang. Okay, sorry. Wala yata na ulit. Ito. Wala. Yata na-install yun. Okay, anyhow. Snipping tool na lang natin para mas malaki. Ayaw din. Sige na, kita naman yan. Dito na lang. Okay, so itong law of sines, law of cosines. See, kung makikita mo yung pattern ng formula, for example, this will start with this one. C squared equals the sum of the square of the sides of the triangle. So a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine gamma. Parang ito yung angle niya, yung opposite angle. Yan. So pag itong sides na kino-consider natin, ang i-cosine niya yung opposite angle din. Yan. So c squared equals, so opposite side equals the sum of the squares of the two sides. So ito yung two sides a and b. So a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine the opposite angle. So yung ibang side naman, tapos yung ibang side naman, for example, itong b side, so b squared equals the other sides, the sum of the square of the other sides, a squared plus c squared minus 2ab cosine, opposite ng b is beta. Yan. Tapos when we solve for a, so a squared and a squared equals the b squared and c squared are the two other sides of the triangle, minus 2bc cosine, opposite ng a is yung alpha. Yan. So we're going to apply this in the problem, sample problems. Okay? So we'll discuss again this one in the sample problem. Mabilis ata maintindihan dun sa sample problem. Then this is the law of tangent. This is very bibihira na ito ginagamit sa mechanics. Pero baka magamit din natin. So for the law of tangents, for a triangle with length of sides A, B, and C, and angles of alpha, beta, and gamma respectively, given two sides and an angle or two angles on a side, one can find a side or an angle through the following formula. So ito yung formula niya. Pero sa mechanics, it's very rare magagamit itong formula na ito.